Welcome to Conversations in Agriculture with your host, Conrad Weaver. Today's program features an interview with John Farner, Head of Government and Public Affairs at the Irrigation Association and the National Groundwater Association. This program was recorded live via Zoom and Facebook on Monday, June 1st, 2020. So welcome to Conversations in Agriculture. My name is Conrad Weaver, and I'm your host for the program. And we are broadcasting on a number of Facebook pages. So wherever you are watching from, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have the opportunity to have with me John Farner. John is with the Irrigation Association. John, exactly what does the Irrigation Association do? What do you guys do?
Oh, thanks, Conrad. Our mission is simple, is to promote efficient irrigation. It's 3 words. So anybody can remember it. It's very important. Our folks are involved in every single aspect of irrigation. So on the agricultural side, we make the irrigation equipment that farmers use to grow their crops, to save water, things like those big center pivots you see that make the circles throughout throughout the United States and the world. Drip irrigation, where we apply drops of water at the root or on the soil to make sure we don't really waste any water. You see those in California, like tree fruits, vegetables, things like that. Anybody that helps works with farmers, saving water, maximizing their yield, things like that.
So what are the big issues that farmers and irrigators in general are facing these days?
I think that I'm gonna take this a step back and view it broadly, Conrad, because we have a pre and post COVID-19
Sure.
challenges that our industry is facing. Generally, the biggest issue that our folks face on a regular basis, whether we're here in a pandemic or not, is access to water, ensuring we have a reliable supply of water to meet the needs of our population. And it's not just what we eat, it's the energy we use, it's the clothes that we wear, it's all sorts of things that agriculture depends on. Even the meat that we eat depends on the feed that we grow for livestock. So making sure we have that water to produce the crops we need is always a big issue of ours. And so we look at the climate, we look at regulations, we look at all different aspects of what will allow us to have access to water, but then on the other side of that, make sure we don't waste it as well. So that's broadly, whether we're in a pandemic or
Mm.
not, that is a top issue that my members and our customers face on a very regular basis.
Mm. I know I stay connected to the National Drought Center's kind of drought map, and I look at that every week, and I see it changing, from week to week. But right now, there's some significant drought areas in the west and southwest. What are farmers and irrigators facing in those areas now?
Some people may not know that the state of California, along with the federal government, measure snowpack regularly in addition to how much rainfall you receive. So you see on a weather report, we've gotten a quarter inch of rainfall in the month of May. We've gotten 2 inches of rainfall in the month of May. It could be different no matter where you are in the United States. While forecasters, regulators, farmers look at that data, we also look at what our future water sources are as well. So it's not just the rain that will fall from the sky, what's in the rivers at any given moment. We can look up at the mountains in the Rockies and see what that snowpack is, go up and actually measure that, because that is our future surface water source moving forward. And right now, in the month of May, in California specifically, and I know parts of Colorado and other areas in the arid Southwest are looking at drought as well, we're looking at about a third, like 37% of normal right now in our snowpack. So while farmers in California and out west are really looking at, okay, how much water do I have right now, and facing all different sorts of regulations with groundwater management, et cetera, we're also looking at how much water is going to be available to those crops that have already been planted down the road, because that snowpack, the runoff, the melting is a primary water source for them moving forward.
It's the topography of the U.S. is amazing. How it's divided with these mountain ranges, and it's kind of hard to believe that the water that comes off the mountains in Colorado ends up in the Mississippi River, right?
Yeah, it's I used the example a few years ago. I know you mentioned Conrad some work done to your house today. We were my wife and I were downstairs watching TV, and I heard this kind of looked like a river flowing through my house, and our pipe had burst in our attic, and it had gone through all four levels of my house down to the basement, so the attic, and then upstairs, downstairs, and then basement. Thank goodness the basement's unfinished. You don't realize how water can move until you have a pipe burst in your house where water was getting through all sorts of nooks and crannies that I didn't know water could get into. It goes where it wants to go. So in the United States, it's absolutely right. It's amazing how we have an interconnectivity between surface water and groundwater and how different water can go in different areas throughout the United States, where you don't realize that what you're doing in our area of the United States, Conrad, ends up in the Chesapeake River and elsewhere afterwards. So there's really an interconnectivity there that not many people realize.
Yeah. And farmers depend on, like in the West, I know even Kansas farmers depend on some of that Colorado snowmelt to help supplement some of the
Yeah,
groundwater that they're using, right?
and the scary part about all of that is if you look at the current water use of the Colorado River, right? So you look at current and then the expectant demand, that curve goes way up for expected demand of the Colorado River, where we're looking at the resources, how much the Colorado River can have, is either staying steady or going down. So it's pretty scary because that delta that you have between what the expected demand is and the current availability is very wide. So when we look at how much water is available and what farmers depend on this water, and they have a right to that water,
Hmm.
there is a water rights that they have. It's pretty scary to look at the demand between drinking versus drinking and sanitation for human consumption versus environmental needs, which is they take a piece of that pie too, that water pie too, and then that of agriculture. And that's one of the things that we've been really struggling with from a policy perspective is to ensure that every entity out there has their fair stake of that water and what they have a right to, essentially.
Yeah, it's especially challenging. I know the time I spent in Las Vegas, and we got to go actually underneath Lake Mead, where the city of Las Vegas is piping out, water from the bottom of the river now.
Mhm.
So you have those challenges of urban areas need water because you have growing urban areas, especially in the Southwest, where there's little water or less water available. But then you have this need, growing population. You got to grow food. You got to provide, agriculture resources for the world. And so how do you balance that? I mean, how do you say you get some water this year, you don't? I mean, what's the balance there for that struggle between agriculture and urban areas?
It's I tell you what, Conrad, if I had that magic bullet answer, I we would be you and I would be able to retire right now, right? It's a struggle. It is a struggle. And I represent the irrigation industry, and we want to make sure that we have access to as much water as possible. We do not go as far as taking water away from human beings to consume. That is a top priority, right? That is a top priority, is making sure that humans have water that they are able to live. However, I think there's a lot of opportunities in order to be more efficient, to conserve, and to not uh, undervalue the water that goes to agriculture. And that's people look at the water that agriculture has as kind of their own reservoir. Well, we can just take that away from the rights of agriculture and move it over here, whether it's to the environment or for urban uses. That is not necessarily the right answer at all times. We need to make sure that entity, the water tail for agriculture, stays in agriculture, but we are not wasting it at the same time. But how you balance that between human consumption, it is very, very, very hard. I think Las Vegas specifically has done a great job. They have used innovation, they've used technology, they've used a lot of tools in their tool chest to make sure that they're only taking out what they need, and they're essentially putting back what they use. There's a lot of water reuse, water recycling involved. We need to embrace 21st century technology to make sure that we have the water available for everybody.
I think ground zero for some of those struggles is the Central Valley in California. And I know there's recently been some comments made, maybe even some legislation that's been tried to go through. What's happening there now, legislative wise, to balance that ecosystem as far as water delivery?
Yeah, it's if I encourage folks to take a look at, just Google water infrastructure mapping of California, and you will see this hodgepodge of lines going all over the state. And the majority of energy used in California is used to pump water from point A to point B where it's needed. And there's a lot of billboards. The California Farm Water Coalition does a great job in their branding, and they say, well, money goes where water flows, or food grows where water flows. That kind of thing. And water is gold out there. It's gold. It's a valuable entity. The challenges that the Central Valley is facing specifically cannot be understated, and that is the area of California where crops are grown primarily. Now, there's other areas throughout California where there is agriculture, but that entity of Central Valley is very much agricultural based, and a lot of the fresh fruits, fresh vegetables that you have on your grocery shelves may come from that Central Valley of California. So what we're seeing now is legislation and regulations that are not only looking at the surface water. So you think of the Bay Delta and the challenges you've had from the Bay Delta with protecting endangered species, not pumping water out of there to get to agriculture, et cetera. But now the last drought, there's a lot of lessons learned from the last drought of California. And one of those is groundwater and groundwater management. Now we're looking at anywhere between 500,000 and 1,000,000 acres of agricultural land going away from agriculture because groundwater is no longer available to those farmers, which is a scary thought. And it's just putting pressure on agriculture as a whole to make sure we continue to have the fruits, vegetables, meat, etc., that we have anything we eat available whenever we want it, which is exacerbated. There's a spotlight on that right now, given the pandemic and unknown, and making sure we have that food supply available to everybody.
So, what can people do that are consumers who are concerned about this? I mean, who can they talk to in their legislature to make sure that our agriculture has the water they need to produce the food that the world needs?
Well, first, I would understand where your food comes from. As a consumer, it's kind of fascinating when you look at where you go to a grocery store, right? You'll go to Wegmans, you go to Safeway, you go to Kroger, any of these local, national, regional grocery stores that you have. Look at where your food comes from and understand that, not only in the fresh fruits and fresh vegetables, the produce section, but also look at the cereals and what the ingredients are in your cereals. Know what's in your food. Take a look at that first. And then think to yourself, where does that food come from? And just what goes into growing that food. It could be, again, canned food, frozen food, whatever it is. Take a look at that. And then think about what you eat each day and where that comes from. Right now, a lot of folks are eating at home. I encourage you to support your farmers by purchasing fresh produce. It's very important. I know I'll get to the answer of your question in a second, Conrad, but one thing that's really fascinating to me is that over 50% of the fresh fruits and fresh vegetables consumed in the United States is not consumed in the home. It's consumed in schools, hotels, restaurants, those things that are closed right now because of the pandemic. And that's why you're seeing a lot of challenges face farmers right now with the food supply. So I encourage you to support agriculture and go out and buy fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and things of that nature. What folks can do is understand that. And then I would say, if you do not live in an agricultural area, say you live in a city or you live in a suburb, I live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in rural Maryland, talk to your congressman. Let them know that you have concern for agriculture and understand that water policy in Nebraska, water policy in Colorado, and water policy in California or Texas or Florida or wherever else affects you. It doesn't affect it. It doesn't stay in that state. It affects everybody. So if you understand where your food comes from, and then understand that decisions are being made by folks that could be on the other side of the country, and how they affect you, that message can be relayed to all levels of your government.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I'm looking forward to the farmers markets opening back up in our area and being able to go out there. There's nothing like going to a farmers market and buying fresh you know,
Come on down to
kind of
Urbana, Conrad. We're opening up every Sunday. We're back open. So.
Yeah. Well, I have, I'm growing my own garden right now. So
Oh,
I'm
good.
excited about that. Going to have fresh tomatoes, and of course it'll be a little while yet, but looking forward to having that. But yeah, it's always fun to go support those local farmers,
Yeah.
farmers markets and
Yeah.
experience those things.
There's a role they play. There's a role for, big agriculture. I say big agriculture, I say big, it's family farms. There's a role that family farms play because the family farms that are in Colorado, Wyoming, Dakotas, California, wherever, we depend on those family farmers as well. And then the local farmers support them too. So there's a role that each one of these agriculture entities play in the United States. It's not one or the other. It can be both.
So as you're traveling across the country, and people that don't understand, agriculture at some point, see these big metal contraptions out in the field, and they're center pivots. And sometimes, we see them blasting water off into space. What are farmers doing these days to be more efficient, to use that water more effectively?
It's amazing how far technology has come over the years, Conrad. Even the 12 years that I've been involved with the Irrigation Association, I've seen a renaissance of technology that wasn't even fathomable back when I first started with the Irrigation Association. We've really embraced the Internet of Things, cellular technology for control systems. We've embraced different technologies to use on farms. And when you look at a center pivot, and for those who don't know what a center pivot is, it's those crop circles that you see. So it's not aliens. It's actually a center pivot where you have um, something in the ground where the water comes up through, and then you have these spans that are connected to towers that go around in a circle and irrigate crops. And you have these tubes that come down with a sprinkler at the bottom of them that are actually applying the water to the crops. And those sprinklers can be up high, they can be down low, really depending on what you grow. Anywhere from what controls those center pivots. And historically, a farmer may look up at the sky, look down at the ground, feel the soil. If it's dry, irrigate. If it's not, doesn't look like rain, irrigate. If your neighbor's irrigating, well, I'm going to irrigate too. Now we are taking weather data, climate data, we're taking soil type, what you're growing, and we can look all controlled from a cell phone. You could be across the country, across the world, and managing your irrigation system from a cell phone. And on the center pivot specifically, we're even seeing this in drip as well. We can apply a specific amount of water that's different in one area of the crop as the other. And that just it's mind blowing compared to where we were 10, 15 years ago. And we're not only saving water this way, we're enhancing our crops. So all of a sudden, a farmer can, double his yield by using the same amount of water if he just applies it properly to what the crops need. And it's pretty amazing what we're seeing in the realm of technology adoption and innovation throughout the industry.
I know you guys at the Irrigation Association also work with landscape irrigation. And I know a couple years ago when I was working on my film Thirsty Land, I interviewed um, someone in Las Vegas, and right now her mind just kind of slips my mind. Her name slips my mind if I can get it out. But she said that the biggest consumer of water in Las Vegas are homeowners because they're growing grass. So as a homeowner, if I have irrigation, are there tools out there that I can use to manage that water effectively?
Yeah, I know you spoke a lot with Pat Mulroy in Las Vegas, and she is she was the general manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, which is one of the most powerful positions in Las Vegas. If a casino wants to open up a new building, guess who has to sign off on it? It's Southern Nevada Water Authority, because you have to ensure that how much water is available to that new casino coming in. Turfgrass landscape irrigation, there's a few things about this that are very interesting. One is the majority of water that is used in landscape irrigation is on your water supply. So it's been treated for drinking. And so all of a sudden that water has gone through a process of cleaning. So now energy is embedded in that water. It's very valuable water. Any water that you and I can drink, Conrad, is very valuable because we can't go down to a lake or a river and drink it safely without being concerned we might get sick. So the fact that it's treated, that becomes very valuable. Now, our infrastructure really prohibits us in many ways from having what we call non-potable water applied to landscapes. Now, a lot of areas in the United States have that available, a lot do not. That's fine. But yes, a lot of water is used in landscapes, used in grass, and a lot of it's wasted. So what we're doing is the same kind of thought process where we are using different technologies, either with sprinklers or through what I call drip irrigation, or what is called drip irrigation. Again, tube or tape where you're applying water directly at the roots or just below the surface, employing a lot of those different technologies, but then using data, using weather data, climate data to ensure you're not wasting water. And if you're in a drought or you need to turn off your water, you're able to turn it off pretty easily, or you're able to reduce the amount of water that's applied to your grass to keep it healthy and vibrant, or whatever, to make sure it's still alive. So that's really, technology is the key there, and also the management of the technology that has come a long way as well.
And it's really a responsibility for all of us to manage the water that we use, whether it's the simple things as, shortening the length of showers that we take, or turning off the spigot when we're brushing our teeth and things like that. That all kind of ties into our water supply, because once that water is used, it's going to be a while before that water is available to be reused again.
Yeah, just look at the water cycle. Google that. There's a lot of resources from the United States Geologic Survey about the water cycle, and think back to second and third grade and fourth grade when you learned about the water cycle, that when it goes through a process, and evaporation, precipitation, it's up in the oceans, evaporates. There's a big water cycle. Now, the one thing you're not going to see in that water cycle is humans and the effects that humans have on that water cycle. So it is disrupted. The water cycle is disrupted by the human consumption, how much we use, what we put back in, et cetera. But yeah, that water, again, it's not just water that comes straight from the river or from the ground or from the lake, whatever your resource is. It goes through a process. There's a lot of energy, a lot of money involved in getting that water to you. So if you think of it that way, as, dollar signs, actually going through, or energy going through your faucets or your shower head, that can give. It's the same thing if you leave a room, you turn off the light to save energy. It's the same kind of thing with water. Think of all the energy and all that water that's taken from that, whatever, source you have. That's a good way of thinking about not wasting it while you're using it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something I know after I produced the film Thirsty Land, that was really front of mind for me, because, I was in those areas of California that they had to haul water to flush a toilet.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's still happening. I know in East Porterville, where we were at, they ended up, having some connections to the city, so they didn't have to haul water anymore. But I'm sure I know there's areas of the world where people haul water. And
Yeah. And I have a few friends internationally who are water leaders on the global scale. And again, when you look at this pandemic that we're in right now, one of the key resources that we have to control this pandemic is water. Washing your hands, making sure everything's clean, washing it off. And a lot of areas do not have access to water to wash their hands. So they may be more susceptible to getting diseases like the one that's going throughout the world right now, or any future diseases that are occurring. So water is key there. And what we saw in California during the drought, while California got out of that specific drought, we're looking at the possibility of going back into one. And our mindsets need to be that our droughts are getting longer and getting worse. And so what we need to do is we need to prepare for those. And we need to make sure that we have water available in areas where it's not easily accessible, and especially in rural areas where they may not have the technology available and they don't have regular access, and their water is limited on a good day. So it's a big challenge that we as a society have to ensure that they continue to have, water available for their own safety.
So kind of circling back to talking about the technology that agriculture uses, have you seen, all this technology is available. Have you seen buy-in by farmers and agricultural leaders around the country to get involved in purchasing these expensive pieces of equipment to manage their water more efficiently?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that ag producers have right now, farmers and ranchers, is access to capital for investment. The ag economy is different than the US economy. So while we, as just regular citizens of the United States who go and do our jobs outside of the agricultural world, we've enjoyed a robust economy over the past few years. We have not been in a recession. This is, pre March. We've not been in a recession. Our economy was growing, job creation was strong, and so we've done a pretty good job. And food prices were low. That's actually a problem for agriculture. Farmers, the margins were razor thin. There was not that much money available for investment in irrigation or other technologies. So while farmers have adopted these technologies generally, there is still a huge opportunity moving forward for farmers, those family farmers, the small farmers, to invest in this kind of technology. We've only scratched the surface when it comes to efficient technology adoption throughout the United States and how we can use our water more efficiently to grow more crops, to save water, to have all those benefits. The opportunities are endless. And while I think the farmers that have adopted it have seen a lot of success, and there have been a lot who have invested, there are a lot more out there who have this opportunity to do the same thing. It's just a challenge. Everything costs money, and having the money available in order to invest in this product, that's something that needs to be overcome.
And as a show note, for in a few weeks, we're having Monty Teeter on the show, and he has developed some new technology that he's been using in not only here in the U.S. but now around the world for using center pivot technology, marrying it with a drip system. And so
Yep.
he's going to be on talking about that in a few weeks. So
Yeah, that's right.
stay tuned. And
Monty is a good guy. Has a good story to tell. He's a friend of mine. He's on
Mhm,
the board of directors for the Irrigation Association as well.
mhm.
So yeah, his technology is very interesting. It's unique. It's very innovative, marrying the two technologies. So yeah, he has a good story to tell.
Yeah, it was fun to be there at his place in Kansas and watching those center pivots work
Yeah.
and using that drip technology.
Yep.
And so he'll talk about that and about
Yeah.
what he's doing around the world. He's in South Africa, he's in Australia, he's in different places like that. So
Yeah.
hitting
Absolutely.
some of these areas that have been especially hard hit with drought.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the technology that's out there, Conrad, whether it's, marrying this drip technology to center pivot, or employing the different kinds of sprinklers that are out there and actually having the tubes go straight down to almost to the surface and have the water being applied via sprinkler there. It's pretty amazing. And Monty's just an example of what's out there. It's
mhm,
it's it's pretty cool stuff.
yeah. Well, what's next for the Irrigation Association? What are you guys working on? What's happening? I know you guys, you have a big program that you put on. Are you able to have events around the country, or is that going all virtual?
Well, we're doing a lot of stuff virtual. Coming up here, we are going to be rolling out a significant amount of online education opportunities for both agriculture as well as turf and landscape. So we're going to be announcing a lot of that in the coming weeks. We have some announcements coming up regarding our irrigation show and education week that is scheduled to be held the first week of December in San Antonio, Texas. So stay tuned for that. So I think we're making an announcement here today at 1 o'clock, Conrad. So keep an eye on our social media pages for an announcement at 1 o'clock regarding that conference. So we are looking to do more and more virtually. I think that I don't want to call it a new norm, but it's a new way of doing business in the socioeconomic climate that we're in right now. Our industry, like many others, relies on in-person contact, in that face-to-face meeting. And we will never, ever go away from that permanently. We are not going to just go virtual. We will, and we do rely on in-person instruction, in-person education. And as soon as we're able to do that and get back up and running, we will. But in the meantime, we're looking to do things like you're doing right here through Facebook Live and Zoom meetings and things like that to make sure that the education stays strong, that people know how to save water. And we look at the critical infrastructure of the United States and essential services. Water is of front and center, making sure that we have enough of it, that we're not wasting it, and making sure we have enough food in order for us to survive. We're front and center, and we need to make sure that we're still treating this precious resource with the utmost respect and not wasting it throughout the process of source to how it's used.
Well, I know it's I mean, all of us like to eat. I know I do. And
You're looking pretty good, Conrad. Come on here.
And having access to good, healthy food, is critical, and we can't do that without water.
That's exactly right. And that's what, when we're in drought, we have a big spotlight on our industry. And we may have drought coming up here, like we started out talking about, Conrad, with
I heard there's like a mega drought. That word's been kind of batted around.
Yeah, it's again, it's forecasted, and nothing is for certain right now, but that word has been kind of batted around about a mega drought that's on the horizon. Remains to be seen. I know that we are getting some rainfall out west, that has brought some areas in Northern California out of extreme drought right now, but that needs to be sustained. And while I think, I mentioned a new normal in terms of the pandemic and how we're doing business, I think a new normal for our water management and agriculture needs to have, always act as if we're going into a drought. Think to yourself, how am I going to manage this water? I need to treat it with respect. I cannot waste it. And I think farmers embrace that concept. They really do. Farmers are not out there to waste water, to have any kind of disrespect for the land. I have never met anybody in my entire life with more respect for the land than I have for farmers, than farmers have for the land. So with that in mind, as we enter whatever, drought, mega drought, whatever that is, we need to take a look at how water is being managed, our infrastructure. There's a lot of opportunities on infrastructure, Conrad. The infrastructure in the United States, water infrastructure, is late 1800s, early 1900s for infrastructure.
That's really scary, right?
It is scary. And to the point where we have Civil War era pipes, water pipes, running through Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Civil War era.
And those are like wooden.
They're wooden pipes.
Yeah, wooden pipes. Wow.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And we have 21st innovative technology that's available for end use. And sometimes they don't match. They don't match up. So we need to bring our infrastructure up to date. We need to look at our storage opportunities. We need to look at how water, what I call conveyed, how it's moved from one point to another, because a lot of water is wasted in the movement of water. And if we can just invest in that infrastructure, we talk about rebuilding America, big opportunity is on water. Whenever we have a water burst, a pipe burst, a main break, and so it floods a road, that's infrastructure. It needs to be updated right there. There's a lot of opportunities out there where we can save water by just looking how it's moved and how it's stored.
I remember seeing a couple of years ago some of those big water mains bursting down in the DC area, and I mean, they're talking a 6-foot diameter pipe, broke, and there's that just floods massive areas.
Yeah.
So there's wasted water right there because because you don't have the infrastructure that is needed.
That's exactly right. And you look at groundwater availability in the southern part of the Ogallala Aquifer. For those who don't know, we have a big aquifer in the central part of the United States that basically starts in the Dakotas, goes through Nebraska, down through Kansas, into North Texas. Okay, it's a big underwater water storage area. So it's an aquifer. In the southern part of that aquifer, the amount of water available has shrunk to the point of none left. But in Nebraska, where a significant amount of agricultural acreage depends on that aquifer for water, it's thriving. And I think a lot has to do with that, right? A lot has to do with where it sits in the aquifer, where the water comes from, how that aquifer is sourced on water.
And the
But it
soil
also
is a
goes
little
to
more
not,
permeable there, right? It kind
yeah,
of filters down a little
but
faster.
exactly. So a lot of it has to do with how water is being used and how much is being pulled out to where it's going in. The advent of center-pivot technology really helped that out. So all of a sudden, we're looking at not pulling as much out, but we're getting a lot more crop based on the amount of water used. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And so the role technology plays in all of water management, including infrastructure, is huge.
Well, I think you guys at the Irrigation Association are really, like you said, on the front lines of that. And I want to thank you for what you guys do to help farmers and irrigators maintain water and manage water efficiently. I think that's
Well,
important.
I appreciate that, Conrad. And it's folks like, we're in the Mutual Admiration Club now because it's folks like you who tell the stories of farmers, who humanize it much easier than I can through storytelling. That is very, very, very important. And when you put a face and a family behind the water struggles or the struggles of agriculture, it means a lot than our efforts for just going on behalf of industry, talking about the importance. Humanizing it is a very critical and crucial component of our overall message. And it's folks like you who are doing a great job in helping that aspect out.
Well, thank you very much. It's a privilege for me to do that and to tell
Yeah.
these stories. So, I want to show people your website
Yeah.
and just to let people know where they can learn more about the Irrigation Association. And this is let me see if I can go
Yeah.
to the homepage here.
Just click on that
So,
right there. It's irrigation.org. It's very simple. And so we have a lot of information on our strategic plan, education, our publications, a lot of advocacy resources. July is Smart Irrigation Month. We're going to be sending out a release here this month announcing July is Smart Irrigation Month again. And we are going to be celebrating the people behind smart irrigation. We can talk about technologies all day long, Conrad, but we're only as good as the people behind smart irrigation, the people
sure.
managing it, the people that are using it, and who they are. And again, putting a face to it like you have successfully have done over the past few years. So that is our goal for this year's Smart Irrigation Month. This decision was made last year, so it's not like we're looking at a pandemic world looking at people. It fits very well. We're on the front lines in many ways, more ways than one, with using water to make sure we have our crops, to make sure that landscapes are maintained. So celebrate. It could not be more perfect time to look at the people behind smart irrigation, from the manufacturers down to the farmers, and how that water is used, and celebrating them this year.
Well, very good. Well, I want to thank you, John, for coming on the program today
Yeah,
and
thanks a
for being
lot.
a part of this and sharing the story about the Irrigation Association, about what you guys are doing.
Appreciate it. Good luck to you.
And
Thanks a
look
lot.
forward to perhaps in the very near future attending another conference with you guys. So
Sounds good to
it's
me.
always fun. I'm
Yeah.
going to give everybody just a little heads up what's coming up on the program over the next couple of weeks. This week, actually, we have on the show Jeffrey Hickman. He's with the Oklahoma Grain and Feed Association. He's coming on this Thursday, June 4th at 4 p.m. here on Facebook. And then coming up next Monday evening, Richard Ebert, president of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, will be on the show. And then on Monday, June 15th, 8 p.m., Dr. Brett Carver from Oklahoma State University will be on the show talking about wheat and wheat development, wheat breeding, and the work that he's doing there at OSU in Oklahoma. This is all part of Conversations in Agriculture, brought to you by the American Farm Network, by the Great American Wheat Harvest, and by yours truly, Conrad Weaver. It's good to be here. It's good to have John on the show today. And John, thank you for being here and sharing your story. And we will talk to you again soon, I am sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Conrad.
The American Farm Network is connecting farmers to consumers through agriculture news and education, and is a production of Conjo Studios, LLC. For more information, visit AmericanFarmNetwork.com.